Karen's dog tugs at the leash, paws damp from the early morning grass. Marcus sits quietly on the park bench, legal papers in his lap, his gaze steady and unhurried. Karen slows as she approaches, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Hema, black man occupying what she considers her space. She steps closer, her lips pressed in a thin, disapproving line. "Karen," voice clipped. "This area is for residents, you know. Marcus.com, not looking up. It's a public park, ma'am." Karen's hand hovers over her phone, 911 already dialed but not yet called. Her thumb trembles slightly. Marcus's hands remain steady, turning a page with quiet composure. In his mind, his mother's voice returns from childhood. "Don't let them shrink you, son." Karen, raising her voice, "You're making people uncomfortable." Marcus, meeting her gaze, "I'm just reading." Her dog whines and pulls toward Marcus. She jerks the leash back, her heel digging into the wet path. A police cruiser pulls up, tires crunching on gravel. Marcus closes his folder, his shoulders relaxed but his posture unyielding. The officer steps out, scanning the scene. "Is there a problem here?" Karen points, her voice rising. "He's threatening me." Marcus reaches for his wallet, moving slowly and deliberately. He hands his ID to the officer, who examines it closely. The judge's badge glints in the sunlight. Karen's breath catches as she sees her own reflection fractured in Marcus's polished shoes. The officer, quietly Judge Bell. A heavy pause settles over the park. Karen slips her phone into her pocket, suddenly uncertain. Marcus stands, tucking his papers under his arm. Marcus nodding. "Just finishing my reading." He walks away, the cuffs of his pants damp with dew. Karen's dog pulls her toward the exit, the leash left behind on the path. The camera lingers on the empty bench as the morning sun dries the last of the dew. Before the story continues, please let us know from where you are watching this video. Write your city or country in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like if you believe in stories that challenge injustice. Your engagement gives power to voices that need to be heard. Karen's hand shakes as she presses the call button, her voice rising as she speaks into the phone. "There's a man here. He's threatening me." The words spill out, sharp and rehearsed, echoing across the open park. Marcus sits still, his hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the horizon. The dog whines, pulling at the leash, sensing the tension. The officer approaches, radio crackling at his side. He glances at Karen, then at Marcus, measuring the distance between accusation and reality. Karen's face is flushed, her breath coming fast. She gestures wildly, her words tumbling over each other. "He wouldn't leave. He scared me. I don't feel safe." Marcus doesn't move. He watches the officer, his jaw tightening just enough to betray the effort it takes to remain calm. In his mind, his mother's warning echoes, "Never let them see you rattled." He breathes in, slow and deep, refusing to rise to the bait. The officer turns to Marcus, his tone cautious. "Sir, can you explain what happened?" Marcus answers quietly, "I was reading. She asked me to leave. I stayed." The officer nods, scribbling in his notepad. The tension between the three of them, thick as the morning air. Karen's eyes dart between Marcus and the officer, searching for validation. The dog circles her legs, leash twisting tighter. She lowers, her voice almost pleading now. "You believe me, right? I didn't know what else to do." The officer doesn't answer, his gaze lingering on Marcus's steady posture. The moment hangs, heavy with unspoken truths. Marcus's hands remain still, his dignity intact despite the accusation. The officer closes his notebook, his expression unreadable. Karen looks away, her story already starting to unravel, the weight of her words settling in the quiet that follows. The officer's hand reaches out, palm open, waiting for Marcus's identification. Marcus moves slowly, careful to show every motion, pulling his wallet from his jacket. He hands it over, his eyes steady, refusing to flinch. The officer flips it open, his thumb pausing as he sees the judge's badge glinting in the sunlight. Karen's confidence falters. Her fingers fidget with the dog's leash, knuckles whitening. She glances at the officer, searching for reassurance, but his posture has changed. He stands straighter now, gaze flicking between the badge and Marcus's face. The moment stretches, heavy and uncertain. Marcus speaks, his voice low but unwavering. "I'm just here to read, that's all." His words are measured, each one chosen with care. The officer studies him, then looks over at Karen. Her earlier bravado has drained away, replaced by a tight, uneasy smile. The dog cowers behind Karen's legs, ears pressed flat. The officer clears his throat, handing the wallet back to Marcus. With a nod, "Thank you, sir." His tone is different. No more formal, almost apologetic. Karen tries to interject, her voice brittle. "You saw how he looked at me. I felt threatened." The officer doesn't respond right away. He glances at his partner, who stands a few steps behind, arms crossed, watching the exchange with a furrowed brow. The tension in the air is thick, every gesture loaded with meaning. Marcus slips his wallet back into his pocket, his expression unreadable. Karen's hand trembles as she pulls her dog closer. The officer finally addresses her, voice neutral. "Ma'am, there's no evidence of a threat here." The words hang. Between them, a quiet shift in power. Marcus turns away, his dignity intact, leaving Karen standing in the growing shadow of her own accusation. The officer's voice drops to a near whisper, the words slicing through the morning air. "Judge Bell." Karen's breath catches, her eyes widening as the weight of the name settles over her. The leash slips from her fingers. Her reflection fractures in Marcus's polished shuza. Silent admission of the truth she tried so hard to deny. For a split second, Marcus is somewhere else. The solemn courtroom, the echo of applause as he took his oath, his mother's proud smile, tears glistening in her eyes. The memory steadies him, fueling the calm in his gaze as he faces Karen again. He meets her eyes not with anger, but with a quiet pity that speaks more than any outburst. The park's usual sounds seem to fade, replaced by a heavy stillness. Pressing on everyone present, the officer steps back, clearing his throat, suddenly aware of the shift in power. His partner glances at Marcus, then at Karen. Uncertainty flickering across his face. Karen's voice falters, barely audible. I didn't know." She looks down, her phone forgotten in her hand, the call she thought would protect her. Now, a source of regret. The dog circles her legs, sensing the tension, ears pinned back. Marcus's posture remains composed, his voice calm but firm. "It's not about who I am, it's about what I represent." The officer nods slightly, the tension easing but the moment lingering. A lesson hanging in the air, Marcus turns, the morning light catching the edges of his papers. He walks away with measured steps, leaving behind the empty bench and a park, forever changed by a single name. Karen stands rooted, the realization settling in, her certainty crumbling. The camera lingers on her face, a mix of shock and dawning understanding. Before fading to the next scene, Marcus stands, gathering his legal papers and tucking them neatly under his arm. His movements are calm, deliberate, every gesture controlled. Karen takes a step back, her shoulders hunched, eyes darting between Marcus and the officers. The confidence she wore moments ago has vanished, replaced by a raw uncertainty she can't hide. The officers avoid her gaze, shifting their weight, hands resting awkwardly at their sides. One of them clears his throat, glancing at his partner. As if searching for the right thing to say, neither speaks. The park, so recently filled with accusation, now feels hollow, the tension replaced by a heavy, awkward quiet. Karen tries to regain her composure, brushing imaginary dust from her jacket. Her dog tugs at the leash, eager to leave, but she hesitates, rooted in place by the weight of what's just happened. She looks at Marcus, but he doesn't return her stare. Instead, he glances at the empty bench, then at the wide path ahead. Without a word, Marcus walks away, his steps measured, head held high. The morning sun casts long shadows across the grass, illuminating the bench he leaves behind. Karen's dog pulls harder, and finally, she allows herself to be led away, her grip on the leash loose and uncertain. As Marcus disappears down the path, the officers linger for a moment longer, exchanging a quiet look before turning to leave. The bench sits vacant, a silent witness to what unfolded, a symbol of pride, exposed, and prejudice left behind. The park breathes again, the stillness broken only by the distant sound of birds and the fading echo of footsteps. Karen glances back once, her face clouded with something between regret and realization. The leash drags behind her, forgotten in the grass. As she leaves, the scene changed. her certainty unraveled by the truth she tried to ignore. Marcus sits at his kitchen table that evening, the day's events replaying in his mind like an old film reel. His hands rest on the table, fingers tracing the grain of the wood. He closes his eyes and is transported back to childhood, walking beside his mother down a cracked sidewalk, past a sign that reads "Whites Only." Her grip on his hand tightens, her voice low but firm. "Keep your head high, but your voice low," she whispers, her eyes scanning the street for trouble. Marcus remembers the way her jaw set, the way she shielded him from glances that lingered too long. The world was smaller then, the boundaries clearer, but the feeling of being watched, measured, always present. He sees himself in a school hallway, a teacher's raised eyebrow as he answers a question too confidently. The memory stings, the echo of know your place, never spoken but always understood. Marcus's father, silent at the dinner table, eyes heavy with things he never said. His mother's hand on his shoulder, steadying him, reminding him that dignity is not granted, it's claimed. Back in the present, Marcus opens his eyes, the weight of those memories settling on his shoulders. He glances at his judge's robe hanging neatly by the door. The fabric, a reminder of how far he's come and how far there is to go. The day's confrontation in the park feels like an echo of those childhood lessons, a test of restraint and resolve. He stands, smoothing his shirt, and looks out the window at the city lights. The world has changed, but the roots of bias run deep. Marcus breathes in, steady and slow, carrying his mother's words with him. Don't let them shrink you. The promise of dignity, hard-won and fiercely kept, guides him forward. Karen sits at her kitchen counter late at night, laptop open, the harsh glow illuminating her tense face. She scrolls through her sent emails, each one a record of complaints, noise, suspicious activity, unfamiliar faces in the neighborhood. Her cursor hovers over a file labeled incidents. She hesitates, then double-clicks. Each document is brief, the language clipped and formal. Unusual behavior, didn't belong, refused to leave. Karen's jaw tightens as she reads, her own words staring back at her, cold and unfeeling. She remembers each incident, the way she justified every call, every accusation, telling herself she was protecting her community. A notification pops up, a neighbor's message. She did this to my son too. Karen's hands shake as she deletes the message, but the words linger. She looks around her kitchen, suddenly aware of how empty the house feels. The dog lies at her feet, restless, picking up on her unease. She begins deleting files, one by one, her breath shallow. Each click is a small admission, a quiet unraveling of the story she's told herself for years. The reports disappear from her desktop, but not from her memory. She closes the laptop, pressing her palms to her eyes, trying to block out the truth. Outside, the street is quiet, but Karen feels exposed, as if every window is watching. The system that once shielded her now feels fragile, the blind eye it turned beginning to crack. She sits in the stillness, the weight of her actions settling in. The paper trail she tried to erase, marking the beginning of her own reckoning. The next morning, Karen's phone buzzes with a flood of notifications. She unlocks it to find her own voice echoing back at her from a grainy video, her accusations. Sharp and insistent, replayed for the world to see. The footage, captured by the officer's body cam, is everywhere. Social media feeds, local news, group chats. Marcus's calm, steady posture stands in stark contrast to her frantic gestures and raised voice at the office. Co-workers huddled around a monitor, the video paused on Karen's face mid-accusation. A colleague glances her way, quickly looking back at the screen. In the break room, whispers ripple, some sympathetic, most uneasy. Karen's phone keeps buzzing, each alert a reminder that her story is no longer hers to control. Marcus watches, the same footage from his chambers, jaw clenched. He sees the way the camera captures every detail, his measured responses. Karen's escalating tone, the officer's uncertain glances. The truth, pixelated but clear, is out in the open now. He closes his laptop, the room heavy with the knowledge that restraint is sometimes the only defense. Karen sits at her desk, hands trembling as she scrolls through comments. This happens all the time. She knew what she was doing. He handled it with dignity. The words sting, more honest than anything she's told herself. She tries to reply, to explain, but but her fingers freeze above the keyboard in homes across the city. People watch the footage, some nodding in recognition, others in disbelief. The video becomes a mirror, reflecting not just Karen's actions, but a pattern too familiar to ignore. The lie she spun unravels in public, the truth impossible to delete. Karen lowers her phone, the weight of exposure settling in as the world quietly judges. Officer Price sits in his patrol car after the shift, hands gripping the steering wheel, the morning's encounter replaying in his mind. He remembers the look on Marcus's face, steady, unblinking, refusing to be diminished. Price's own son flashes in his thoughts, walking home from school, eyes cast down to avoid trouble. Earlier at the park, Price recognized Marcus immediately. He'd seen him in court, always dignified, always composed. But routine demanded questions, demanded the same tired steps. He'd asked for ID, spoken in that measured tone, all while his gut twisted with doubt. His partner watched, silent, arms folded, waiting for him to lead. Back at the station, Price avoids the break room. He hears snippets of conversation, officers debating the video, some defending Karen, others shifting uncomfortably. Price keeps his head down, signing paperwork with a hand that won't stop shaking. He remembers his father's words, "You were that badge for everyone, not just yourself." He replays the moment he handed Marcus's wallet back, their eyes meeting for a fraction of a second. No words passed between them, but the message was clear. Marcus's restraint was a challenger reminder that justice means more than following orders. At home, Price sits at the kitchen table, his son watching cartoons in the next room. He pulls out his phone, scrolling through the video again, this time seeing his own hesitation, the uncertainty in his posture. He wonders if he could have done more, said something different, broken the pattern instead of repeating it. He closes his eyes, the weight of the badge heavier than ever. The system's grip loosens just a little as Price faces the truth. Sometimes, doing your job isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose what's right, even if it means standing alone. Marcus sits at his desk late into the night, a blank page staring back at him. The house is quiet, the city outside hushed. He picks up his pen, the weight of the day pressing on his shoulders. He thinks of his father, of a faded photograph tucked in a drawer, a reminder of everything his family endured. The words come slowly at first, then gather strength. He writes, "Justice delayed is justice denied." He pauses, remembering the sting of every slight, every moment he was told to wait his turn, to lower his eyes, to swallow his pride. He refuses to do that now. Each sentence is a release, a quiet act of defiance. He writes not just for himself, but for every boy who's ever been told he doesn't belong. His wife enters the room, mug in hand, her eyes tired but proud. She sets the mug beside him, squeezing his shoulder. They're listening now," she says softly. Marcus nods, not trusting himself to speak. He keeps writing, the pen scratching across the page, each line a testament to dignity under fire. The next morning, his op-ed appears in the paper. The headline is simple, direct. Karen reads it at her kitchen table, her reflection staring back from her coffee mug. The words cut through the noise, reaching people who've never had to think twice about who sits on a park bench. In offices and classrooms. Readers pause, absorbing the truth in Marcus's voice. Some nod in agreement, others shift uncomfortably. Karen's hands tremble as she folds the paper, her own words from the day before echoing in her mind. Marcus's words linger long after the page is turned, a quiet reminder that dignity is claimed, not granted. Marcus opens the door to find Pastor Brooks on his porch, a casserole dish in one hand and a worn Bible in the other. The pastor's eyes are kind but weary, his smile gentle. He steps inside, setting the dish on the kitchen counter, glancing at Marcus's wife as she pours tea. The house feels different, quieter, heavier since the incident. Pastor Brooks sits at the table, folding his hands. "I read your words this morning," he says, voice low. "You spoke for all of us." Marcus nods, gratitude flickering in his eyes. He looks down, unsure how to respond. The pastor continues, "There are people outside who see you. They're listening now more than ever." Marcus's wife places a cup in front of the pastor, her hand lingering for a moment. She offers a tired smile, the kind that comes from nights spent worrying and days spent holding her head high. "Thank you for coming," she says quietly. The pastor nods, understanding the weight of her words. They sit together, the clock ticking in the background. The pastor shares stories of others in the community, young men stopped on their way home, mothers who worry every time their children step outside. He talks about hope, about the slow work of change, about the courage it takes to keep showing up. Marcus listens, the burden on his shoulders easing just a little. He looks at his wife, sees the pride in her eyes, the resilience. In her posture, the pastor stands to leave, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You're not alone," he says, voice steady. "We're with you. We always have been." As the door closes behind him, Marcus feels the quiet strength of his community gathering around him, a whispered promise that the fight for dignity is never fought alone. Karen sits on her couch, phone in hand, scrolling through her contacts. She sends a message, no reply. Another, then another. Each attempt is met with silence or a curt, "I can't talk right now." She tries calling her closest friend, but the call goes straight to voicemail. The living room feels colder, the walls closing in with every unanswered ring. She pours herself a glass of wine, hands shaking. The dog whines at her feet, restless, picking up on her unease. She glances at the television, where news anchors debate her actions. Her name appearing in the crawl at the bottom of the screen, the words "sting." The judgment from strangers amplified by the sudden absence of support from those she once counted. A new message flashes on her screen. "This is too much. I need space." Karen's breath catches. She looks around at the half-empty bottles on the coffee table, the clutter she's ignored for days. The dog circles, then settles with a sigh. As if resigning itself to the tension in the room, she scrolls through old group photos, faces smiling back at her from better days. Now, each memory feels distant, unreachable. She types out an apology, hesitates, then deletes it. The words feel hollow, too late to matter. Her phone buzzes again, but this time it's just a news alert and other headline. Another opinion. Karen leans back, staring at the ceiling, the weight of isolation pressing down. She realizes that the protection she once felt, the certainty that her friends would always take her side, has vanished. The cost of complicity is loneliness, a truth she never expected to face so soon or so completely. The dog rests its head on her knee, the only comfort left in a room full of regret. Marcus stands in his study, the evening light casting long shadows across the room. On his desk, the judge's gavel sits untouched, its polished surface reflecting memories of courtroom battles and hard-won respect. He reaches for it, fingers brushing the wood, but he doesn't lift it. Instead, he lets his hand fall to the desktop, the gesture quiet but heavy with meaning. He recalls his swearing-in ceremony, mother's proud tears, the applause of colleagues, the sense of purpose that filled the room. Now, the silence in his study feels different. It's not defeat, but restraint. He could speak out, demand justice with the authority his title gives him, but he chooses not to. He knows that sometimes power is best shown in what you refuse. To do that, his phone buzzes with messages requests for interviews, statements, television appearances. Marcus ignores them all, determined not to become a spectacle. He wants his actions to speak louder than any headline, his dignity to remain intact even as the world clamors for drama. In the hallway, his wife pauses, watching him through the doorway. She sees the weight he carries, the discipline it takes to hold back when every instinct screams for vindication. She steps inside, placing a gentle hand on his back. "You don't have to prove anything," she whispers. Marcus nods, grateful for her steady presence. He sits down, the gavel gathering dust beside him. The camera lingers on its shadow, stretching. Across the desk, a symbol of power held in check, of justice measured not by noise but by quiet resolve. Marcus closes his eyes, breathing deeply, reminding himself that true strength often lies in restraint. The world outside may demand a show, but he knows his worth isn't defined by how loudly he speaks. The video explodes across social media, shared by thousands in a matter of hours. Screens light up in living rooms and offices, the hashtag judging justice climbing the trending charts. Clips of Marcus on the park bench, Karen's accusations, and the officer's uncertain stance play on a loop, each replay sharpening the contrast. Between dignity and panic, teenagers film reaction videos, their voices raw with disbelief. "This could have been me," one boy says, shaking his head. A young woman posts, "He stayed so calm. I don't know if I could." Comments pour in, some angry, some supportive, many simply stunned. For every voice defending Karen, 10 more demand accountability. In the break room at Karen's workplace, co-workers gather around a laptop. One woman bites her lip, glancing at Karen's empty desk. A man mutters, "She always seems so nice." Another shrugs, "You never really know people." The mood is tense, uncertain, the air thick with judgment and second-guessing. Marcus's face appears on television screens, his judge's robe juxtaposed with the image of him sitting quietly. In the park, news anchors debate the meaning of restraint, the burden of expectation, the reality of bias. Karen's employer pauses the video, her jaw set as she drafts an official statement. The court of public opinion is in session, and the verdict is swift. At home, Marcus watches the hashtag climb, his phone vibrating with messages of support and requests for comment. He puts the phone down, unwilling to let the noise define him. Instead, he looks out the window, watching the city move, unaware that his story is now part of a larger conversation. One he never asked to start, but cannot ignore. The police chief stands at the podium, cameras flashing, reporters jostling for space. His uniform is immaculate, medals shining under the harsh lights. He reads from a prepared statement, voice steady but distant. "We take these incidents seriously. We are reviewing our actions and will ensure all officers receive additional training." The words are careful, measured, stripped of any real emotion. Behind him, Officer Price stands with his hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. He shifts his weight, jaw clenched, unwilling to meet the gaze of his colleagues or the cameras. The chief continues, "Our department is committed to fairness and accountability." The press scribbles notes, some exchanging skeptical glances, others already preparing their follow-up questions. Marcus watches the press conference from his office, the chief's words echoing through the speakers. He recognizes the pattern statements made, promises offered, but little changes. He turns, the volume down, unwilling to let empty assurances distract him from the work that matters. At the station, officers gather in the hallway, some nodding in agreement, others silent and withdrawn. Officer Price slips away, the chief's words ringing hollow in his ears. He remembers Marcus's steady presence, the quiet challenge in his eyes, and wonders what real accountability would look like. Karen sits at home, watching the broadcast, her face pale. She listens to the chief's words, hoping for vindication, but finding none. The apology is generic, the commitment vague. She realizes that the system she once trusted to protect her is now protecting itself. As the press conference ends, the city resumes its routine, the chief's statement already fading from memory. The promise of change hangs in the air, unfulfilled, as those most affected wait to see if this time will be any different. The mayor stands at the city hall podium, flanked by community leaders and a wall of press. Her smile is practiced, her gaze sweeping the crowd with a polished calm. She holds a stack of new bias training legislation, but her eyes flicker for a moment to a framed op-ed on her desk. Marcus's words, still unread. She begins, her voice steady but rehearsed. "Today, we take a step forward in ensuring fairness in our city services. This training will help us serve all residents with respect and dignity." Her words are met with scattered applause. Behind her, a council member shifts uncomfortably, glancing at the mayor with a mix of hope and skepticism. The camera pans to Officer Price, sitting quietly in the back row, nodding subtly, his face a mask of cautious optimism. A flashback interrupts the moment, the mayor accepting a campaign donation from Karen, her smile tight but polite. The memory lingers as she signs the bill, the applause around her feeling distant, almost hollow. The tension between past alliances and present promises hangs in the air. Back in the present, reporters snap photos, their questions muffled by the official statements. The mayor's words echo in the chamber, but the weight of past compromises is heavy. Outside, community members exchange wary glances, their hope tempered by years of broken promises and political theater. Karen watches the broadcast from her living room, her expression unreadable. Her phone buzzes with messages she ignores. The dog lies quietly at her feet, sensing the tension in the room. The mayor steps down from the podium, shaking hands with supporters. Her smile remains, but her eyes reveal the cost of balancing appearances with conscience. The camera lingers on the framed op-ed, then fades to the city skyline. City caught between the pull of real change and the inertia of old power. Karen stands at the entrance of her mansion, afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the immaculate lawn. A process server approaches, papers in hand, his face unreadable. Karen's hands tremble as she accepts the summons, the weight of the document far heavier than the thin paper suggests. Her dog circles her feet, barking softly, picking up on her anxiety. She glances toward the courthouse visible in the building she once thought would always be on her side. The process server offers a polite nod, then turns and walks away, the iron gate creaking shut behind him. The sound lingers in the air, final and unyielding. Inside, Karen's fingers shake as she unfolds the papers. She reads the charges, her breath catching as the reality settles in. The mansion, once a symbol of control and comfort, now feels cold and confining. She moves through the halls, each step echoing with uncertainty, the opulence around her suddenly meaningless. Outside, the city goes about its business, unaware of the quiet reckoning taking place behind closed doors. Karen sits at her kitchen table, the summons spread before her, the dog resting its head on her knee. She runs a hand through her hair, unable to shake the sense that everything is changing, that the system she relied on is no longer hers too. Command. Across town, Marcus stands by his courthouse window, watching the sunlight glint off the glass. His expression is calm, eyes steady. He knows what the summons means, a system finally turning, the first real sign of accountability. He turns away, the burden of justice, balanced by the hope that things might finally begin to shift. The camera pulls back, capturing the distance between Karen's mansion and the courthouse, a world of fading privilege on one side, rising dignity. On the other, the gate swings closed, its sound a solemn punctuation to an era ending and something new beginning. Marcus stands in the courthouse lobby, black robes draped over his arm, the low hum of voices echoing off marble walls. He takes a steady breath, smoothing the fabric before slipping it on. Each movement is deliberate, a ritual honed by years of discipline. The bailiff opens the doors, and the courtroom hushes, all eyes turning as Marcus enters. Karen sits at the defendant's table, her chair scraping against the floor as she shifts, nerves raw and exposed. She glances up, meeting Marcus's gaze for a fleeting second before looking away. The prosecution team arranges their files, exchanging quiet nods. In the gallery, reporters ready their notepads, the weight of the moment clear in their tense posture. Flashbulbs pop as Marcus takes his seat at the bench. He looks out over the room, face composed, but his mind flickers back to a memory, his mother smoothing his first suit, her hands trembling with pride. He straightens his shoulders, drawing strength from the memory and the generations who came. Before him, the bailiff's voice rings out. All rise. The room stands, a collective breath held in anticipation. Marcus surveys the faces before him, some familiar, others strangers each, one waiting for a sign, a verdict, a shift in the balance of power. Karen's lawyer leans in, whispering urgently, but she barely hears him, her focus locked on the judge who was once just a man on a park bench. Marcus's gavel rests within reach, but he doesn't touch it yet. Instead, he lets the silence settle, the gravity of the proceedings pressing down on everyone present. The courtroom is a stage, but today, the performance is stripped of pretense. Justice is not about spectacle, it's about truth, measured and unflinching. He nods to the clerk to begin. The doors close behind him, sealing the room in a charged stillness. The reckoning is no longer coming, it's here. Marcus adjusts the nameplate on his bench, fingers lingering on the engraved letters, Bell. The courtroom feels heavy, the air thick with unspoken histories. His eyes flicker to Karen, sitting tensely at the defendant's table, her breath shallow, hands clenched. Flashback, a law professor's sneer echoes in his mind. You'll never sit here. The memory sharpens his resolve. He meets Karen's gaze, not with anger, but with quiet determination. The gavel rests before him, a symbol of battles fought, and won. Karen's shaky breath breaks the silence. She shifts in her seat, the chair scraping softly against the floor. The weight of the room presses down, every eye fixed on the judge who was once doubted. Marcus inhales slowly, steadying himself. His voice, when it comes, is calm but firm. This courtroom is a place for truth, not fear. The gallery holds its breath. A juror's knuckles whiten around a folded program. The prosecution team exchanges glances, the tension palpable. Marcus's hands rest lightly on the bench, the gavel untouched but ready. His presence commands the room not through volume but through the weight of his dignity. The scene closes on Marcus's face, composed and resolute, as the courtroom waits for the next move. The silent battle continues, but the tide has shifted. The judge's robe brushes the polished wood as Marcus shifts his weight, the room's tension thickening. Karen's eyes flicker with doubt, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. The courtroom's heavy silence is punctuated only by the soft rustle of papers and the distant murmur of the gallery. Marcus's gaze sweeps the room, absorbing the weight of expectation and history. He recalls the countless moments of quiet dismissal, the whispered doubts that followed him through every step of his journey. Yet here he stands, a testament to resilience and dignity. A subtle nod from the bailiff signals the start. Marcus's voice, steady and measured, cuts through the stillness. Let us proceed with clarity and fairness. The camera lingers on Karen's face, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her composed exterior. The prosecutor rises, papers in hand, and approaches the witness stand. His voice is measured, but there's a current of tension beneath the surface. Ms. Whitman, do you recognize the man seated at the bench? Karen's lips part, but no. Words come out at first. She glances at Marcus, her eyes darting away almost instantly. The courtroom hangs on her silence. She finally manages a whisper. Yes. Her voice is thin, barely audible. The prosecutor pressed. Is this the same individual you accused in the park? Karen nods, her fingers twisting a tissue in her lap. Each question peels back another layer of her certainty, exposing the cracks beneath her composure. Marcus sits motionless, his face unreadable. Beneath the bench, his fist tightens, a flicker of old wounds resurfacing. He remembers the sting of childhood taunts, the echo of "you don't belong here." The memory is sharp, but he lets it pass, focusing instead on the present. On the duty before him, a juror leans forward, eyes narrowed in concentration. Another glances at Karen, then at Marcus, the weight of the moment settling over the jury. Box. The prosecution team exchanges a look, sensing the shift in the room. The defense attorney scribbles a note, his jaw set. Karen's voice trembles as she continues. I thought he was someone else. The prosecutor doesn't let up. Someone who didn't belong? The question lands hard, reverberating through the courtroom. Karen's shoulders slump, her certainty unraveling in front of everyone. Gaze remains steady, never wavering. He knows this is more than a trial, it's a reckoning. The courtroom absorbs the tension, every person present feeling the weight of history and the sting of truth. The prosecutor steps back, his point made. The lie unravels, stitch by stitch, as the room braces for what comes next. Marcus rises from the bench, his robe trailing behind him. The courtroom was quiet, every eye fixed on him. He stands tall, but his voice is soft, steady. My name shouldn't matter. My humanity should. The words settle in the air, heavier than any accusation. Mascara streaks down her cheek. She looks away, unable to meet his gaze. The prosecutor sits back, pen motionless, as if unwilling to break the spell. In the gallery, a reporter lowers her notepad, absorbing the gravity of the moment. The fans overhead hum, the only sound in a room otherwise frozen by the truth. Marcus glances at the jury, his expression open, vulnerable. He remembers his son's question from years ago. Why do they hate us? And the ache it left in his chest. He lets that ache fuel his resolve, speaking not just for himself, but for everyone who's ever been reduced to a label. Karen's lawyer shifts uncomfortably, clearing his throat. Objection, Your Honor. But the judge holds up a hand, silencing him. The message is clear. Some truths demand to be heard, no matter the rules. Marcus continues, his words measured but full of quiet force. We are all more than the stories told about us, more than the fear projected onto us. I ask this court to see me, not just my title, not just the color of my skin, but my humanity. A hush falls over the room. Even the bailiff, usually stoic, blinks back emotion. Karen wipes her face, her hands trembling. The jury sits in rapt attention, the weight of Marcus's words pressing on their conscience. The scene closes with Marcus returning to his seat. Shoulders squared, dignity intact. The truth has been spoken, not with anger, but with the quiet power of someone who refuses to be diminished. The judge's hand hovers above the gavel, the courtroom holding its collective breath. Karen sits motionless, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles are white. Marcus watches from the bench, his expression calm but resolute, the gravity of the moment reflected in his steady gaze. The judge's voice is clear, each word deliberate. This court finds the defendant guilty of filing a false report. The gavel falls, the sharp crack reverberating through the room. Karen sags in her seat, the verdict landing with a force she can't deflect. A ripple moves through the gallery, some faces relieved, others thoughtful, a few quietly stunned. Outside, the muffled sound of protesters erupts in cheers. Marcus exhales, a weight lifting from his chest. He glances at the flag behind the bench, its stripes catching the light, casting long shadows across the floor. The officers in the room shift some, exchanging uneasy glances. Others straightening their posture as if reminded of the seriousness of their oath. Karen's lawyer leans in, whispering urgently, but she barely hears him. Her eyes are fixed on the judge, her world shrinking to the space between the bench and her chair. The prosecution team gathers their files, their work done. But the echo of the gavel lingeris, sound that marks not just a verdict, but a turning point. Marcus stands, his robe brushing the side of the bench. He nods to the bailiff, who calls the court to order for sentencing. Karen's shoulders slump further, her confidence now replaced by a quiet resignation. The courtroom is still, the verdict settling over everyone like a heavy blanket. The gavel's echo fades, but the meaning remains. Justice has been served not with vengeance, but with the measured certainty of truth. The room slowly empties, each person carrying the memory of the moment justice spoke. Clear and undeniable dot, Karen stands as the judge reads her sentence, voice even and unyielding. 200 hours of community service in the neighborhoods. Affected by your actions, the words land with a finality that leaves no room for protest. Her lawyer sighs, gathering papers, eyes avoiding hers. Karen's face is pale, her lips pressed into a thin, uncertain line. Marcus watches her, his gaze steady but not unkind. He remembers seeing her at a neighborhood block party once, her laughter loud, her circle tight. Now, the same streets she avoided, the same faces she once dismissed, will become her daily reality. The bailiff approaches, hand gentle on her arm, guiding her from the courtroom with more care than she's ever shown those she accused. Outside, the courthouse steps are crowded with reporters and onlookers. Karen shields her face, the cameras flashing, questions flying. She doesn't answer, her voice lost somewhere between shame and disbelief. The city feels different, now unfamiliar. She catches sight of a mural across the street, painted by local kids. The words read, "We belong." She looks away, the message stinging more than any headline dot in the days that follow. Karen scrubs graffiti from brick walls, sorts food at a shelter, and listens to stories she once would have dismissed. The work is hard, the hours long. She feels the eyes of the community on her, some cold, some curious, a few quietly forgiving. Each day chips away at her certainty, forcing her to see what she never wanted to face. Marcus hears about her progress through the grapevine. He doesn't gloat, doesn't seek updates. Justice for him is not about humiliation. It's about truth, about learning, about the slow, difficult work of change. Karen's sentence is not just punishment, it's a chance for her to finally see the world she tried to keep at arm's length. Karen walks out of the courthouse, her heels clicking unevenly on the marble steps. The crowd's murmurs swirl around her, a mix of judgment and curiosity. Paparazzi flashbulbs burst like distant thunder, capturing every falter, every glance. She pulls her coat tighter, trying to shield herself from the weight of the moment. Reporters shout questions, but Karen's lips press into a thin line. She doesn't answer. Her breath comes shallow, the cool air filling her lungs with a sharp sting. Behind her, Marcus steps forward, robes flowing, calm and composed. His gaze is steady, unshaken by the chaos. A reporter calls out, "Judge Bell, how do you feel?" Marcus pauses, then replies quietly, tired. His voice carries the weight of years spent fighting unseen battles. The crowd shifts, sensing the quiet strength in his words. Karen's steps falter, the rhythm of her heels uneven now. She glances back once, eyes meeting Marcus's for a brief moment. There's no anger, there only the heavy pulse of defeat. The courthouse doors close behind her, the sound of final punctuation. Marcus walks down the steps, the sun casting long shadows. His robe brushes the polished stone, a symbol of dignity reclaimed. The camera lingers on Karen's retreating figure, her perfume fading into the air, replaced by the steady heartbeat of justice. The scene closes on the courthouse steps, the echo of footsteps mingling with the distant hum of the city. The balance has shifted, quietly but irrevocably. A teenage boy stands at the bus stop, phone in hand, watching the verdict replay on a small, cracked screen. His mother stands beside him, umbrella tucked under her arm, eyes fixed on the video. The rain falls in a steady rhythm, drops mingling with the tears on the boy's cheeks. He wipes his face quickly, glancing around to see if anyone notices. His mother pulls him close, her voice barely above a whisper. "See, it's possible." The words hang between them, heavy with hope and relief. Around them, others watch the same footage on phones, in shop windows, through bus windows fogged with breath. For a moment, the city seems to pause, united. In the quiet release of years of tension, across town, the park bench where it all began is no longer empty. Flowers rest on the seat, left by strangers who never met Marcus but recognize his quiet courage. A group of children play nearby, their laughter rising above the memory of accusation. The park feels lighter, the air easier to breathe. Karen's dog wanders the edge of the park, leash trailing, ignored by passersby. The animal pauses by the bench, sniffing at the flowers before moving on. The gesture is small, almost unnoticed, but it marks a shift to community beginning to heal, to reclaim what was lost. On the bus, the boy leans against his mother, phone tucked away. He closes his eyes, letting the motion of the city carry him forward. The verdict is more than a headline. It's a promise that dignity can prevail, that justice, though slow, can finally arrive. The city exhales, the storm breaking, leaving behind the possibility of something new. The mayor signs the new bias training bill in a quiet ceremony. The city council chamber nearly empty. Marcus's op-ed sits, framed on her desk, its headline visible to those who care to look. She smiles for the photographer, but her eyes wander to the window, watching the city move below. Officer Price sits in the back row, hands folded, listening as the mayor thanks the community for their patience. He nods, a small gesture of commitment, but avoids the eyes of colleagues who once doubted the need for change. The chief stands at the edge of the room, arms crossed, face unreadable. For the first time, the conversation feels different, less about appearances, more about responsibility. In the courthouse, a janitor polishes Marcus's nameplate, pausing to admire the reflection. He smiles, a private moment of pride, then moves on to the next task. The halls are quieter, the usual tension replaced by a sense of anticipation. Staff members exchange nods, some hopeful, others wary, all aware that something fundamental has shifted. Karen sits at home, watching the news coverage. She sees Officer Price volunteering for the new training program, her calls to him unanswered. She realizes the system that once shielded her is learning to listen to voices it used to ignore. Marcus walks the courthouse corridor, passing portraits of judges who came before him. He stops, hand resting on the frame of his own photograph. The gavel's echo lingers, not just in the courtroom, but in new policies, changed minds, and the slow, steady work of rebuilding trust. Outside, the city moves forward, the verdict already woven into its daily rhythm. The unseen jury, the public, the staff, the officials delivers its own verdict, not with applause, but with the quiet adoption of new standards. The shift is real, even if it's silent. Marcus stands by the courthouse window, sunlight streaming. In, casting long shadows across the polished floor, he watches as Karen loads boxers into a community van parked on the street below. Her movements are slow, shoulders hunched, every gesture weighed down by the past weeks. She glances upward, searching for something, perhaps forgiveness, perhaps understanding. Their eyes meet through the glass for a fleeting moment. Karen's gaze is pleading, her posture uncertain. Marcus holds her stare, his own expression calm but resolute. He doesn't wave, doesn't smile. Instead, he turns away, robe trailing behind him, the light catching on the fabric as he moves down the hallway. Outside, Karen closes the van door, pausing to look back at the courthouse. The bench in the park across the street is now occupied by a multiracial group of teenagers sharing lunch, their laughter echoing off the stone buildings. The city feels changed, lighter, more open, the old boundaries blurred by new connections. Marcus steps out into the sunlight, the warmth on his face a quiet reward for the battles fought in silence. He passes the park, nodding to the group at the bench. One of the teens nods back, a silent acknowledgement of respect. Karen drives past, her face half hidden by the glare. Her future uncertain, but her path altered. The camera lingers on the courthouse steps, the shadows receding as the sun climbs higher. Justice has settled in not with fanfare, but with the quiet assurance that the world, for all its flaws, can shift. The last glance exchanged between judge and defendant is not one of hatred or triumph, but of acceptance, of walk forward, changed by what has passed, shaped by the light and the darkness they've endured. Karen sits alone at a corner table, her coffee growing cold as she scrolls through headlines on her phone. Every article bears her name, each one a reminder of the trial, the verdict, and the city's collective judgment. She looks up, searching the room for a familiar face, but the regulars avoid her gaze. The barista, once warm and chatty, now keeps her distance, delivering drinks to other tables with a forced smile. Karen's hands tremble as she reads the latest opinion piece. The words sting, privilege on trial, justice finally served. She tries to focus on the hum of conversation, but every laugh, every whisper feels directed at her. She shifts in her seat, tucking her hair behind her ear, wishing she could disappear into the background. Her phone buzzes with another news alert. She silences it quickly, glancing around to see if anyone noticed. A group of young women at the next table glance her way, their conversation dropping to a hush. Karen's cheeks flush, a wave of embarrassment washing over her. She stirs her coffee, the spoon clinking against the mug, the sound far too loud in the quiet space. She scrolls through old messages from friends. The support she once took for granted has vanished, replaced by a wall of silence. She types out a reply, then deletes it, unable to find the right words. The weight of her name in the news is heavier than she imagined, no longer a shield, but a burden. As she gathers her things to leave, Karen catches her reflection in the window. She barely recognizes herself. The world outside moves on, indifferent to her discomfort. She slips out the door, unnoticed, her coffee left untouched, her place in the community uncertain and unclaimed. Marcus strolls through the park, the morning sun warming his face. He's greeted by nods and quiet smiles. Neighbors, who once looked past him, now offer a wave or a gentle hello. Children race across the grass, their laughter filling the space where suspicion once lingered. The old bench, once a stage for accusation, is now home to a chess game between two strangers, one black, one white, both focused and relaxed. He pauses by the playground, watching a group of parents chatting nearby. One mother, who had avoided his gaze weeks before, meets his eyes and offers a soft smile. Marcus nods in return, feeling the subtle shift in the air. The park feels different, lighter, more open, as if a weight has been lifted from the ground. Itself, a city worker plants new flowers by the path, humming quietly. Marcus bends down, admiring the freshly turned soil. "Looks good," he says. The worker grins, wiping sweat from his brow. "It feels like a new place, doesn't it?" Marcus nods, the truth of it settling in his chest. Nearby, a group of teenagers toss a football back and forth, their shouts echoing across the field. No one glances over their shoulder, no one worries about being watched. The boundaries that once divided the park have faded, replaced by a sense of shared belonging. As Marcus continues his walk, he passes the bench where it all began. Flowers rest on the seat, left by someone who wanted to honor what changed here. He sits for a moment, closing his eyes, breathing in the peace that now fills the park. The world is still imperfect, but here, for now. Inclusion has replaced isolation. He stands and moves on, leaving the bench for the next person, Nipasuni, person who needs a place to rest. Marcus stands before a circle of law students. The classroom, quiet, except for the soft rustle of notebooks and the occasional scratch of pens on paper. His voice is steady but warm as he shares. Let your work speak, even when your words are doubted. The students listen intently, some jotting notes, others absorbing the weight of his experience. A young black student meets Marcus's gaze, hope flickering in her eyes. She nods slowly, the unspoken promise of resilience passing between them. Marcus recalls his own journey, the whispered doubts, the silent barriers, the moments when dignity was his only shield. He remembers the long nights studying, the times he was overlooked, and the quiet strength it took to keep moving forward. He continues, "Justice isn't just about the courtroom. It's about every choice you make, every moment you stand firm." The room feels charged, the air thick with possibility. Outside, the city hums, unaware of the seeds being planted within these walls. The students lean in, their faces a mix of determination and reflection. A professor at the back watches quietly, nodding in approval. A student shifts nervously, glancing at her phone, then back at Marcus. Inspired despite her doubts, Marcus's wife waits outside the door, her smile tired but proud, a silent pillar of support. As the session ends, students approach quietly, some with questions, others with gratitude. Marcus smiles, the quiet power of change reflected in their faces. The classroom, once just a place of learning, now feels like the beginning of something larger. Movement born from dignity and determination, the camera lingers on the young student's notebook, filled with notes and a single phrase underlined. Speak with strength, even in silence. The words echo the lesson. Marcus imparts a reminder that true power often lies in quiet resilience. Outside, the sun dips lower, casting long shadows through the windows. The students pack up slowly, their minds heavy with new resolve. Marcus watches them go, knowing the fight for justice continues beyond these walls. Carried forward by those willing to listen and act, Karen stands in the community center's sorting room, folding donated clothes into neat stacks. The air is filled with the quiet shuffle of volunteers, the occasional laughter from the hallway, and the low hum of conversation. She keeps her head down, focusing on the task, but the weight of curious glances and hushed whispers is impossible to ignore. An older woman approaches, her arms full of jackets. She sets them down beside Karen and pauses, studying her with a gentle but searching look. "You're new here," the woman says, her tone kind but direct. Karen nods, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm trying to help." The woman smiles, a little sadly. "We all are, in our own way." As they work side by side, the woman begins to share her story years spent fighting for fair housing, the exhaustion of being dismissed, the small victories that kept her going. Karen listens, her hands faltering as the reality of those struggles sinks in. She realizes how little she truly understood about the lives of the people she once judged from a distance. A young volunteer offers Karen a cup of tea, her gesture shy but genuine. Karen accepts, surprised by the warmth in the girl's eyes. She sits for a moment, watching the room around her, people of all backgrounds working together, their differences set aside in the service of something greater. Karen's apology remains unspoken, but her actions grow more careful, more considerate with each passing day. She learns humility in the quiet work, her privilege stripped away by honest connection and the willingness to listen. The community doesn't forget, but some begin to forgive, recognizing the effort in her presence. As the day ends, Karen helps sweep the floor, her movements slow and thoughtful. She looks around, seeing the center not as a place of punishment, but as a chance to rebuild. For the first time in a long while, she feels the possibility of belonging earned, not assumed. Marcus stands in the city council chamber, the atmosphere subdued, every seat filled with quiet anticipation. The mayor approaches the podium, flanked by community leaders and city officials. Her voice is steady as she announces the signing of new anti-bias training legislation, a step toward systemic change. Not just symbolic gestures. Officer Price sits in the back row, nodding subtly, his face a careful mask of cautious optimism. Council members exchange glances, some hopeful, some skeptically aware of the long road ahead. Marcus watches from the sidelines, his expression calm, but resolute, knowing that real progress is measured in small, persistent shifts. Reporters snap photos, their questions softened by the weight of official statements. The moment is understated, lacking fanfare, but heavy with meaning. Outside, community members gather in small groups, sharing wary looks and tentative smiles. The air feels charged, not with celebration, but with the possibility of genuine progress. On the mayor's desk, Marcus's op-ed sits framed but unread, a silent reminder of the work that remains unfinished. Flashbacks flicker in Marcus's mind, promises made and broken, campaigns shaped by old alliances. The mayor's smile is practiced, but her eyes betray the tension between public image and personal conviction. As the ceremony ends, Marcus steps outside, greeted by a handful of supporters. Their gratitude is quiet, their hope cautious. The city hums in the background, the quiet shift in policy, a small but meaningful victory. The camera lingers on the city skyline, the light shifting as day turns to dusk, a subtle symbol of change. In motion, the scene closes with Marcus looking out over the city. The promise of reform hanging in the air, fragile, hard won, but real. The work isn't finished, but for the first time in a long while, the direction feels right. The news vans pack up and leave, their antennas folding down as quickly as they arrived. The city's attention shifts to the next story, the next crisis. Marcus walks through downtown, unnoticed, the weight of recent headlines already lifting from his shoulders. The faces on the street are the same, but the way they look at him has changed, more open. Less guarded. Karen reads the morning paper at her kitchen table, her name no longer on the front page. The articles that once dissected her every move are replaced by stories of city events and neighborhood fairs. She scrolls through her phone, the barrage of notifications slowing to a trickle. The silence is unfamiliar, almost unnerving at the courthouse. Life resumes its rhythm. Staff greet Marcus with quiet respect, their conversations lighter. The tension that once filled the halls now eased. He meets with colleagues, discussing cases, the trial already becoming a memory. The impact lingers, not in grand gestures, but in the small ways people treat each other, a door held open, a nod of acknowledgement, a smile exchanged in the elevator. In the park, children play, their laughter rising above the hum of traffic. The bench that once symbolized conflict now serves as a resting place for anyone who needs it. Flowers left in Marcus's honor have wilted, but their presence is still felt. The community is changed, not by spectacle, but by a quiet commitment to fairness. Karen steps outside, feeling the world move on without her. She walks her dog through the neighborhood, passing familiar houses. Some neighbors wave, others turn away, but most simply go about their day. The scandal has faded, leaving behind lessons learned and wounds that will take time to heal. Life continues, the city moving forward, changed but not defined by the past. Marcus sits quietly in a small community center room, the walls lined with books and soft light filtering through the windows. Across from him, a mentor, an older woman with kind eyes, listens intently as Karen speaks, her voice trembling with newfound humility. "Karen, I thought I was doing the right thing. I never asked who I was hurting." The mentor nods slowly, her gaze steady. Change doesn't roar. It whispers, and it waits for someone to listen. Marcus watches the exchange, the weight of years of struggle reflected in the silence between them. Karen's hands fidget with a folded piece of paper, the unspoken apology hanging heavy in the air. The mentor continues. Real change comes from understanding, from the quiet moments when we face our own truths. It's not about grand gestures, but the small steps we take every day. Karen looks up, eyes glistening. "I want to learn to do better." Marcus leans forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. It's a start. Listening is the first step toward justice. The room feels charged with possibility, the past and future converging in this moment of fragile hope. Outside, the city hums. Unaware of the quiet revolution unfolding within these walls, the mentor smiles gently. We all have a role to play. The question is, are we willing to listen? Marcus nods, the resolve in his eyes clear. Karen's shoulders relax, the tension easing as she absorbs the weight of the moment. The camera lingers on the three faces, each marked by different journeys, united by a shared commitment to change. The scene fades with a sense of quiet determination, the whisper of real change growing louder in the stillness. The mentor's words hang in the air, a gentle challenge that fills the room with a new energy. Marcus's gaze shifts to the window, where the city's pulse beats steadily, unaware of the small but significant moment unfolding inside. Karen breathes deeply, the weight of her past actions settling into a quiet resolve. She looks at Marcus, then at the mentor. Understanding that this is not just a conversation, Marcus returns to the park at dusk, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows across the freshly painted buildings. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers and the distant laughter of children playing. He walks slowly to the bench where it all began. Now adorned with small bouquets and notes left by neighbors, moved by his quiet strength, he sits, the wood worn smooth by countless hands, and breathes deeply. Around him, the community gathers in small groups, sharing stories and smiles. The maintenance worker tends to a patch of wildflowers nearby, pausing to wave at a child planting another seed. The receptionist organizes a modest potluck, her laughter light and genuine, a stark contrast to the tension that once filled these spaces. Marcus's gaze drifts to the horizon, where the city lights begin to twinkle against the darkening sky. He thinks of the journey, the silent battles, the moments of doubt, the resilience that carried him through. His hand rests lightly on the bench, a symbol of the space justice has carved out in this neighborhood. Across the street, Karen watches from a distance, her figure shadowed and small. The dog at her side is quiet, leash slack. She does not approach, her posture heavy with regret and reflection. The world she tried to control moves on without her. The wall she built, now covered in murals and flowers. The camera lingers on Marcus, his face calm but resolute. He whispers to himself, "We were seeds," a quiet affirmation of growth and change. The scene fades as the garden blooms around him, a living testament to dignity, resilience, and the enduring power of quiet justice.